Okay, so I would like to share with you just some commentary that complements the document I am also sending to you, as well as posting to our Canvas page, that are the essentials for what I'm requiring from you, the guidelines for the midterm paper project, right? So it's a research-informed assignment that is going to be very closely resembling the work carried out by Colbert in her piece, right? Because this assignment is asking you to engage with public discourse, right? So to think about how experts are interested in a topic that you choose, and then for that topic, present to your audience what's known about that topic, what matters about that topic, what's at stake about that topic, right? Why is it you want your audience to give their attention to your writing and choosing that topic? So some of those essentials for the paper itself that I want to share with you in my voice is that this is a paper where we're approaching it through the writing process, right? Because you look at the document and you open that PDF that is accompanying the message with this video link, and or if you take a look at that file posted to the Canvas page, it's 3 pages of content where I'm breaking down in detail what I'm expecting from you for this assignment, right? So that's a lot of information, but it's there and it's organized and presented to you in a way to make it clear, what am I expecting from you? What am I asking from you for this assignment? So this piece of research writing, this response project, which is our midterm formal piece of writing, I'm subtitling it Demythologizing Reality. So on that first page of our syllabus, I'm sharing with you a quote, and I shared this with you on our first class meeting, from the Brazilian educator Paulo Freire, who was talking about why critical thinking and problem posing is so important, right? This way of seeing clearly, right? Having a greater awareness, especially about what matters. And this writing assignment is asking you to share with your audience what matters about the topic that you've chosen and your approach to that topic. Why give attention to it? Why care? So what? Right? So during this brief presentation I prepared for you, I'll make some reference to our other sources that I've been requiring you to take a look at, and we'll be continuing to incorporate into our class discussions and considerations. But one thing I do want to emphasize is that this project, and all I'm asking from you and all I'm saying to you in the PDF document, please be aware that we're approaching this through the writing process, right? It's not a one and done kind of assignment, right? We're going to build up to having that final complete draft, right? So you'll see then, and this is why I deliberately organize and present the information to you in this way in the assignment document, that right near the top is the essential dates, right? Because we're going to have a series of writing workshops. Yes, we're not in person, but we're doing this in the way that can work for sure, especially because as of beginning of next week, or week 3, I'll be assigning you into a research writing team, right? So it'll be part of your writing community within our class, where you're not working on the same topic as your colleagues, your classmates in your research writing team, but those are critical readers who will also provide you with some feedback as you go through the writing process for this midterm paper, and you remain with that research writing team once we get started on the work and those early stages of work for what will be the final paper, right? That more academic, or that longer, more sustained piece of academic research writing, which is how our class finishes. So for this assignment, we have these essential dates that is helping you go through the writing process to get where you need to be to have a complete, and one hopes, an effective piece of writing for this project. So Thursday, the 19th of September, we have our response project writing workshop, a pre-writing workshop. So our goal is, going into that day, that Thursday, that you will have selected your topic that you're interested in. I'm not assigning the topic to you. We'll be brainstorming throughout this week, the next couple weeks ahead of us. And in going into that class, you'll have been required to make your topic selection, and then also to begin your background research to inform yourself about that topic, right? Because I'm not expecting you to be an expert in this topic, to be, however, well informed about the topic that is required, right? So we have that first stop along the way for the writing process on the 19th, right? So that pre-writing workshop will be focused on you're having selected that topic and getting and gathering the background information you need to find out who are the experts, what fields are they in, what kind of agencies, governmental, non-governmental agencies are involved, uh, so that you can start building your own knowledge base about that topic. Right. Then for Tuesday, September 15th, continue drafting. I set aside that day to start to share with your research writing team some of your early writing and incorporating the sources that you've consulted. And we'll be doing some work in these classes ahead on locating potentially helpful databases that you have access to through the LaSalle Library. All right, I know some of you have used some of these databases. Some are not very familiar, and some of the databases I'll recommend, you may not know anything about them at all. So these could be potentially good places either to find a topic, or once you have an idea for a topic, get some of that background information and some of those potential sources to help you start drafting and writing the paper. So that'll be a writing workshop day devoted that Tuesday the 15th to continue to work, but also checking with your research writing team about what do you have so far, getting some feedback, and then part of this writing process is to take that feedback, think about how could you respond to it, how to revise, how to continue your work towards that full complete draft. And then Thursday the 17th, the goal then is to have the complete working draft of the response project that you will then exchange with members of your research writing team. And then I'll provide guidelines for you to be a good, careful, close reader of that draft, provide targeted feedback, right? And then you as the writer, when you receive that feedback from your research writing team, to consider, well, I hadn't quite thought about that way. Maybe I should give a little more attention to this part of my paper. Maybe I need to clarify that approach, or say a little bit more about evidence on what's been going on maybe more recently in maybe this region or this city or with this population, right? Whatever happens to be relevant with your topic and the way you want to approach it, right? So those 3 dates alone, right, are helping you through this process of going from pre-writing, which is where we are now, no one has chosen a topic, to then getting to that point on the 17th of September of having a complete working draft, and calling it a working draft because that's not the version you're turning into me and saying, Dr. Rennie, okay, this is what I want you to grade and evaluate me on. You're not there yet, because then you have until Tuesday the 22nd to then submit that final draft. So you'll submit that to Canvas prior to the start of that Tuesday's class, and that is the version that I will then be evaluating. All right, so I just want to emphasize that as part of these remarks to you, that in this assignment, we are approaching it through the research writing process. All right, so writing process, and because we're a 210 class, the research writing process. All right, so in these classes ahead, especially next week and the week after, we're looking at, I'm asking you to do some things with the library resources, right? That will be relevant to this project, which I would say, if we have any model so far, is like Colbert's piece of writing. That is, it's going to be an example of public discourse. That is, Colbert, she has expertise as a journalist, but she's writing on a topic. She's not a neuroscientist. She's not a cognitive psychologist, right? She's not a psychiatrist, right? Yet, she has located, she has thought about, she's made connections among expert material and is sharing it with an audience that she's assuming consists of non-experts. Right? So I'm asking you to do a version of that for this midterm paper. So that's why I'm calling it public discourse, and why I was asking you to think about discourse in class on Tuesday of this week, and why we'll think about it further in tomorrow's class. Right? So that is just something about the writing process for what's going to end up being the midterm paper, right? So that would be beginning of week 6 of the semester. That final draft will be due to me. So some of those other essentials, length, content between 4 and 6 pages. So that's not including the works cited page of the sources that you've consulted and you're drawing from, right? To inform your approach to the topic, to making a claim about the topic, why you want your audience's attention about that topic, why you've approached it that way, why it matters, right? Because I'm asking you for Thursday of this week to read that chapter from the They Say, I Say book, where at one point in that chapter 12, reading for the conversation, think about that central question. What's motivating this writer, right? You need to express to your audience, what is your motivation to think about through your writing this topic, why approach this topic in this way, right? Your audience is going to be relying upon you. Your readers are relying upon you to have that explanation, have that made clear to them, right? And pretty early on in that chapter, and they say, I say, you've got the author saying to us, right, this importance of moving from reading for the author's argument, right? Because they talk about the opening of their chapter, that they found it was kind of tough when they're working with student writers in their classes. If they're leading with the question, what's the argument of this source? They found that that didn't really lead to a lot of productive conversation with their students. Instead, when they pose that question, what's motivating this writer? How does this argument exist in relation to other perspectives, other positions, right? That idea that we get from Nardi about, uh, about being cautious, about binary discourse, because there's so many topics in our world, especially as made clear, who's being made clear, or in some ways demythologized, just as others are mythologizing. Some of the topics this year about public health, health access in this country, about criminal justice, about policing in the United States, right? Racial justice, economic justice, health justice, right? Some of those concerns, right, where these are complicated, complex topics, and take an either or position on them, right, that does an injustice to the topic itself. That's committing binary discourse, right, to talk about these topics, to write about them, to discourse, to converse with them in such a way, right? So to think about what's being claimed there in They Say, I Say, and the work that I'm asking you to engage in for this assignment, right, our midterm, well, consider not only the words and what's said by Nardi and the claims that he makes, right? Take care about that kind of discourse, binary thinking, right? It's kind of black or white thinking, either or, on or off. It's either got to be this way or it's got to be that way. Wow, that's very, that's very limiting, right? That does a disservice to complex, complicated topics. Right? And if you come across about your topic in this paper in a way that is limited in such a way, that makes it a lot less persuasive to your audience. It's going to raise some serious questions, as it should, for your audience, for your reader, your listener, depending how you decide to approach this public discourse project, right? Which we'll talk more about some of those options, some of those possibilities. If you're coming across as really only having given attention to or looked for one particular approach without an acknowledgement of others, right? So we're thinking about, once you're choosing or brainstorming about choosing your topic, how to be informed about it, as well-rounded as possible, right? Not to be an expert. That's not the expectation. That's not realistic, but certainly to be informed on your topic, to know what's at stake. For whom is it at stake? What are the consequences? How come? How well can you answer those key questions on the topic that you choose to share in this assignment, right? So that question that is then revised, or we're told in They Say, I Say, in that chapter, what's motivating this writer, that becomes the more productive question. Because that's getting you to think about, these are topics where a lot of people are invested who don't necessarily always agree with one another, or there's certain points that there is disagreement. And the more you're aware of that, and the more you can share that in the topic that you choose and write about for this assignment, the more successful and effective you will be, right? So just wanted to make that reference to Nardi, and then also to one of tomorrow's sources that I've assigned to you, They Say, I Say, because I thought it's pretty interesting for the work we're doing right now, when these authors, Graff and Birkenstein, the authors of They Say, I Say, that the move from reading for the author's argument in isolation, right, that's less productive, that's less effective, leads to less effective writing, than to reading for how the author's argument is in conversation with the arguments of others. The result, right, can help readers become active, critical readers, rather than passive recipients of knowledge, right? So that quote that I've shared with you on the front page of our syllabus, that I shared with you on the first day we met, Tuesday of week 1, right? From that Brazilian educator, Paulo Freire, who'd gone into exile in the United States. Now we have 2 high schools in Philadelphia named in his honor, right? Where he's talking about, and where I'm getting the title for this assignment from, to demythologize reality, right? That ought to be our goal, especially if we're writing about a topic of consequence, right? Because especially at our moment in 2020, right? He said that decades ago, that quote I shared with you, right? But this moment in 2020, right? There's an abundance of mythologizing that is misinformation about topics, right? Coming at us from all different kind of angles, right? It's in our inbox, right? It's in our news feed, right? All these social media platforms, right? People making the Dunning-Kruger effect fallacy I shared with you, right? Overconfidence about a topic they don't know nearly enough about, right? Not having that humility of a learner, right? Who's willing to admit they know a certain amount, but there's always more they could know. There's more that can be added to their understanding, right? And being open to that, right? So just some things for us to consider going into, because we're still the pre-planning stage for this paper, but also I'd ask you to think about, so we got a length of content, 4 to 6 pages, and you also want to think about, well, what do I, Dr. Rennie, expect from you for being informed by sources? So at least 5 sources to integrate into your discussion that you locate via research. Although one of those 5, as I note on the assignment guideline document, should be a source I've shared with all of you in these opening weeks. So maybe it's Akita, right? So I'm recording this around 1 p.m. on Wednesday of week 2. So our next class meeting, when I see you, I've assigned to you that presentation from Akita about a topic that he cares about called global citizenship, right? So maybe there's something about Akita you want to include as one of your sources, or maybe something from Colbert or Nardi. That's fine. So one of these 5 sources, at a minimum of 5 sources for this paper to inform it, help you shape it, to be informed, come across, we hope, persuasively and effectively to your audience. One of those sources is required to be one of those sources that I've assigned to you in common, right? That we're thinking about together. I'm asking you to either watch, listen to. There'll be a couple podcasts I'll be assigning fairly soon. That could be an option, right? That's fine, because those are examples of public discourse, especially the ones I'm going to share with you. There's 2 I've chosen. They're very recent, from within the last 3 or 4 weeks. They've aired. And then also think about this idea from Akita. So on this slide, the last thing I have on here, I've broken down a paragraph that's on the assignment sheet for this piece of writing. And what I'm asking you to consider is, ideally, the question you choose to motivate this paper and your response to the topic you're choosing is that you're choosing it because the investigation and its results mean something to you. Because engaged, interesting writing is more likely going to come from your choosing a topic you have something about which you care, right? The less you care about it, it's much harder to write about, and especially to come across throughout a paper that you're engaged and invested in it. That is revealed to your audience, right? It's hard to fake that you don't really care about the topic and still write effectively about it. And that's why I'm not assigning the topic to you, right? I want you to think about possibilities in these opening weeks. Why I'm asking you to look at The Guardian, in one of those sections of The Guardian, that international, that is that British newspaper, non-US newspaper, piece of journalism, long-form journalism, something that catches your eye, that you want to read about, you want to know something more about, right? Because that enthusiasm, that comes across to your audience as well. Right, whether it's something you're talking about, like in a TED Talk, Aaron Huey, and a podcast, like 2 examples I'll share with you, or some of the writing we've taken a look at. Right, these are motivated by writers who care about some aspect of the topic. Right, and then Akita goes on and he claims, and I want you to consider, that as members of a democratic society, we all bear equal responsibility for decision making. That's the ideal. We have an ongoing shared need for valid, informed commentary about the many issues confronting us, right? And recording this at a moment, just looking at it nationally, right? We've got a lot of injustice in our society, right? We think about ourselves as Lasallians, right? We are challenged to think about, right, what is the role and our role in it of working towards social justice in some form, in some way, right? What is my part, right? Whether it's for anti-racism, we're thinking about issues involving access to public health, right? Issues involving economic justice, right? All those many branches within those large areas of concern, and many more, right? It has something that is shared with the audience, or at least to his audience from Akita. So without this informed commentary about your topic, especially we're thinking about democracy with its ideals, my emphasis on ideals, because there's many that have not yet been realized for too many of our fellow citizens. And I'm not saying you got to choose a topic that is somehow socially justice motivated at all, but you need to give the awareness what's the consequences and for whom and why, where the topic is that you do choose. But I do have a framework around this class and how I approach a humanities class that we can find, or hope you do see, a connection with Akita, who is claiming without this informed commentary, we're in danger of drifting away from our responsibilities as citizens and increasing the risk to the well-being and prosperity, yes, of possibly limiting and in fact limiting opportunities for ourselves, but also for our local communities, and then nationally as well as truly globally. Right, so just some of those essentials from the assignment sheet I just wanted to break down for you. Some of that philosophy behind the assignment as I see it, as I've put it together to share with you. Right, I'm not going to go through all the rest that's on there. I'm requiring you to read over that document, but I want to share in my voice some of these essentials, the fact that it's the writing process, as well as thinking about some of these connections to these readings I've assigned to you, Nardi. We're thinking about they say, I say, what's motivating this writer, that key question for writers like ourselves, but also someone like Daisuke Akita, who's making a claim about global citizenship, which has so many related topics under which, or those topics which they fall under this interest in global citizenship, where a global citizen, according to Akita, would hope that such a person would be concerned with, want to know something about. Right, and then just a couple other things to share with you to finish off this commentary from me in between our class meetings, is that, right, we're thinking about, among our rhetorical strategies, the importance of ethos, and here we are thinking about this first formal writing assignment where you are an author. We know that ethos is important about the idea of the audience and your relationship between audience and the creator of that work, and the authority that that creator has, the trustworthiness that they have. And we have this talk taking place in a couple hours from when I'm recording this for you, our first Explorer Cafe. And like I'm asking you to think about for your formal writing in this class, for it to be generated by, motivated by, and even structured by some central research question. And we see that there's actually a question being posed is a title for the first of the Explorer Cafes, right? So our co-facilitators, our co-hosts for this first of these cafes are asking, what does it mean to be Lasallian in the midst of a pandemic, right? So you can imagine that they shared this question, developed it between themselves, and that helped them to figure out, what do we want to include in today's talk? And even think of it as a title, or it's something to help get, they hope, I'm sure, to get the audience's or potential audience's attention so that they have an audience, right? Because they want to have this talk, not just between the two of them, but with the larger Lasallian community, right? They're hoping for, and I'm hoping some of you are able to tune in and be a member of that audience today, right? And then just the other thing, to build off some of the stuff we've been doing for the second week, at the bottom of this slide, we're given information. We want to think about what to say about the ethos of these authors of this talk. Well, for both Dr. Diaz and Dr. Rexing, we know Dr. Diaz and Dr. Rexing because we're given their credentials. Each has earned a PhD, right? So this terminal degree, the most advanced degree within their field of study, they've been awarded, they have earned that. And then we're also told they have different professional backgrounds, the departments in which they work. So you've got Dr. Diaz in ISBIT, you have Dr. Rexing in public health, which suggests to us, oh, we're gonna have this interdisciplinary that is a multi-perspective approach that's informing this discussion on this topic posed by their talk's question. Right, so just something for you to think about with what I'm asking you to do in this paper for the midterm, right? This is not an artificial kind of exercise. I mean, this is something that happens in talks like Explorer Cafes, which are meant for an audience outside of their classes, right? Even meant to have of interest, even outside the immediate community as well, right? Because I'm sure there's going to be parts of that, the content of that talk that, yes, it's going to be tied to a Lasallian population and community, but it's going to be touching on those who are non-Lasallians as well. All right, so just some things that you're going to be considering with the topic that you choose, right? Who's involved, who's thinking about it, what do they know, how do they know this, and how do you want to share that with your audience, right? And then just a couple other things, just to finish off. I also asked you to start looking at and reading from our course textbook, our reading textbook on research. So the craft of research, we started with chapter 2. I'm asking you going into tomorrow's class to, at the very least, I mean, make sure you read it, but to reread, again, I'm assuming there, hope that's not too big of an assumption, but the last couple of pages where those questions are, those 4 categories of questions are presented to you, right? Because I'm asking you to consider your audience for this writing assignment. And the authors, the co-authors of this chapter, asking you to think about how do you connect with your reader? This idea of recreating yourself and your readers, right? In that relationship that is built for you to attain, hopefully and effectively, your purpose in whatever it is that you end up producing for the midterm, right? You want to give a consideration, not only giving that consideration, but that must be included as part of your thinking and how you put this together, this research project. Who is your reader? Who is the audience, right? And then something I'm taking from chapter 2 is that relationships, writer to reader, we're given something that is, I thought, pretty interesting for us that I want you to think about with this assignment, with this midterm, that you have the authors in chapter 2 have 2 examples of writing on the same exact topic, but it's for 2 very different audiences. So you have 1A, that is an expert writing for other experts in the field, and the language and the structuring of that language has to match that. Then you have version 1B, same exact topic, but the word choice, the explanation, the structuring on the sentence level in that paragraph is very different, because that is assuming an audience, is expecting an audience of non-experts, right? So my expectation for you as writer in the midterm, not for you to be an expert on your topic, but to be informed on your topic. And because we're approaching this assignment as public discourse, that is for an audience of non-experts, you want to come across as someone who's done your due diligence, who's found out current relevant information on your topic, which we'll be working together in the writing workshops in the next couple of weeks of what databases to use that you have access to through the LaSalle library for topic ideas, generating topic ideas, and getting background on the topic. And that you want to think about not only this example of 1A versus 1B here on this slide, and the background is that's the Franklin Institute, and that's a giant heart. So that museum here in Philadelphia that you can walk through. And I just chose that because it's a Philadelphia connection. And you've got this example from our textbook of writing about something involving the heart and cardiac system of the heart, specifically calcium blockers. But I'm asking you to think about as a writer that Colbert, right, that is our main source for Tuesday of this week. I asked you for the week's questions for discussion. The thing about Colbert is someone who's a non-expert in the field about which she's writing, but she has consulted expert research on her topic, and she has included that into her writing. She has woven that in for her audience, right? Which, as we read that, we became that audience, right? None of you, nor am I, a cognitive scientist or an expert in the field of cognitive science, whether through psychiatry, psychology, or in one of the other branches of neuroscience, right? Yet, she's written for an audience in such a way that is close to 1B. And I'm asking you to think about that for a midterm, to be expertly informed on your topic, but to be writing about it in such a way as we find it as a model in Colbert, her magazine article, Why Facts Don't Change Our Minds. Right, so you've got that example. So another way we think about the sources I've been assigning to you in these early classes of preparing you to think about this assignment, right, of getting you ready for it, right? And then a last thing from me is you just draw, again, and bring in some of my personal experience that's fairly recent. So over this past weekend, I had watched this movie, Ghost Watch. Um, I just want to share this with you because I'm thinking about how am I going to write about Ghost Watch? I didn't watch it with the intention to do anything other than be entertained, or I hope to be entertained, and I was. It's a pretty interesting movie, but it's not new. It's from 1992. It was broadcast on Halloween, 1992, on British television, the BBC, um, which for a long time had been the only network TV, or the main network TV in the UK. For British audiences. It was never broadcast again in the almost 30 years since, because there's this controversy around the movie, right? Because there's a movie that that people weren't expecting. This is pre-internet. It's pre-Blair Witch, or if you know the movie Wreck, the original Spanish movie, or the American versions and their sequels, or Paranormal Activity. Ghost Watch does it first, and audiences weren't prepared for that. Were these parts of the audience, and there's an outlash and complaints that are lodged against the BBC who broadcast this movie on Halloween night, because the people on this DVD cover, each of them had their own talk show as of 1992. They're each fairly well known for a type of work, and they're public personalities, but they're playing fictional versions of themselves. And a fair amount of the audience weren't expecting that. And they're thrown and they're fooled in certain ways. So I'm thinking about writing something about Ghost Watch. All right, so I just want to throw this out there as kind of, here's an example of something that Dr. Rennie's up to that I don't know if it's going to be an academic piece of writing, but I know I've been thinking about it. I want to do something with this source. And I'm thinking about a question I'm asking you to think about for this assignment. How do I approach a topic related to this source? So I'm starting from this movie, and what do I imagine about my audience? Because I have to decide, am I going to write this more academically, or am I going to write this for a more popular audience using popular discourse? Because there's a good friend of mine, I've done some guest writing for him for his website. He runs a blog, but it's an American Studies blog. So he's an American historian and a professor of literature. And his website, it almost exclusively focuses on American topics. And this movie, Ghost Watch, right, it's a British production. That's not American. But if I'm going to have it potentially appear through his site, I have to frame this in a certain way. And as I was saying to you, Ghost Watch is predating movies like The Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity, or the American version of the Wreck movies, right? That is this kind of found footage. Those are all American productions. So maybe I could do some kind of comparative work, something about, why should we still pay attention? It's a question I still have to refine, but why pay attention to a movie from 1992 that only aired one time ever on British television, and it never showed up again, right? It was never broadcast, never aired even one other time since then. It's now this kind of cult. It really is a cult movie because it became very hard to access until fairly recently. Released on DVD, and you can find it online in some places too. So just want to throw this out there because there's an example from me, or like right now, literally like this week, I've been thinking about since Saturday, off and on. And when that happens, if I think about something in that way, I know that it could lead to a piece of writing. And I have to decide, how do I want to approach that piece of writing, right? Because an academic article, I'm going to have to write about that in a different way because I'm thinking about a different reader for that piece of writing than I would if it shows up on my friend's website potentially, right? That's going to be a more general audience. I have to think about, like, am I expecting people to have a background in horror or an interest in horror? Because if they don't, and I want them to read this, I got to again think about how am I going to frame it? How am I going to present it to them? Right, so just want you to think about some of these possibilities, these options for this assignment. Right, so that reading that we're doing, these discussions we're going to be having, the things that we'll be working on together in the weeks leading up to starting the writing process, because we're still in the pre-writing, the pre-planning stage. Hopefully this has been helpful, right? So this really meant for these comments that I've been sharing with you in these slides to really just complement the full guidelines in the PDF document. All right, so that will accompany a link to this video that I made for you this early afternoon on Wednesday of August 26th. And then take a look at the document itself on the assignment prior to this Thursday's class. Give your attention, please, to the readings I've assigned to you for this week. Please make notes, have a notebook at hand and ready for class tomorrow, because I do want to open with a discussion of Colbert. And I hope if you're able to, you can attend that virtual Explorer Cafe on that essential Lassallean question about this ongoing pandemic and this health crisis that I'm predicting is going to be, the effects will be with us for quite some time. And hopefully we get some changes that result, that are supportive of our communities who are at risk and too often have been excluded. Great, so take care and see you soon. Bye.